we go into explaining the new portal system. So first, I wanted to just point out what our primary goals are for bringing you all together. We really want to use this opportunity to improve your ability to submit quality applications this year, and give you guys a chance to create relationships and kind of build some coalition between your organizations and other organizations that do similar work. So a little background about Susan G. Komen, our international organization. We are the world's leading nonprofit breast cancer organization. We have unmatched, comprehensive 360-degree approach to fighting the disease. We advocate for patients, we drive research, we improve access to high-quality care, and we offer direct patient support so that we can empower people with trustworthy information. We are the world's largest breast cancer organization, and we funded almost $1 billion in research and provided more than $2.9 billion in funding for screening, education, treatment, and psychosocial support programs. We were founded by Nancy Brinker. So our bold goal is to reduce the current number of breast cancer deaths in the United States by 50% by the year 2026. And for our community grant specifically, our aim is to reduce breast cancer mortality by addressing disparities, increasing access to quality and timely care, and improving outcomes through patient navigation.
Okay, so one of the ways that we are going to reach our big bold goal is something new that we've done the last 2 years, and I appreciate that we have some new applicants and new people who are interested in our grants on the phone, as well as some returning ones. So you will see a couple of things that have changed and some things that may look redundant. So this is something new that was added to the grant applications 2 years ago, just to show where we have some of the accrediting bodies at. So when you do apply for the application, you're going to see this same box come up in the application for you to just check anything that applies to your organization or to where you're navigating your patients to.
So Susan G. Komen Chicago was specifically founded in 1997. Our affiliate specifically has contributed to about $18 million in breast cancer education, screening, and treatment, and we've contributed nearly $6 million to global research. So this is a little bit about the breast cancer continuum of care. It's a model to show how women typically move through the healthcare system for breast care. Ideally, a woman would enter at the space where they're getting screened for breast cancer and then move quickly through the continuum by receiving timely quality care in order to have the best outcomes. Ideally is not what always happens in practice. So unfortunately, there are some gaps in the continuum of care and at the screening stage, as well as in other areas. So our focus as an affiliate is to address those gaps, and we aim to fund diverse collections of programs that serve different stages of the continuum of care.
And then you'll see that education is on the outside. With the idea around that is that education should be embedded in every single one of your breast health programs, and education should be going on at all times. One thing that we do not fund is education and outreach only programs. Though we understand the importance of them, it's much harder to show the impact or change in behavior or knowledge. So we as an affiliate don't fund education only or outreach only programs. So please keep that in mind.
So this is the community grants process overview. You'll see the largest box is where we are now. Every 5 years or so, we do produce a community profile, and that's what our grants process is essentially rooted in. And that's where we take an in-depth look at the breast health needs in our service areas. And then we use that to develop our funding priorities. And that's how you guys get the RFA that we produce. That's We want to identify eligible applicants, and so of course, after we have you guys submit an application, we do have to do a compliance review, and that's when we just check to make sure that your program meets the eligibility requirements of the RFA. Our ultimate goal is to have a wide range of high-quality applications to present to the review panel, and we want to have confidence that you guys are producing the most impactful programs. So this workshop is one example of how we help make that happen. Once our applications are reviewed, go through the compliance review process, they're reviewed by an independent review panel that's comprised of experts and representatives from the community. The review panel develops a grant slate that's presented to our board of directors for formal approval, and then we award the grants for the upcoming year and begin a process of managing the grants and monitoring the grantees' progress toward their objectives. So here's a list of important dates that are coming up, some pretty soon. I want to highlight that our application deadline is going to be December 6th this year. And then our grantees will be notified of their selection status by March 31st in 2020. We're hoping that the first check will be issued sometime in that range, and then we'll have a 6-month progress report and a second payment around October 31st, 2020. The final report and the return of any unspent funds from the grant award will be due April 30th, 2021.
And just want to
Serena,
point
can
out
I
that
interrupt?
Yes.
Can I just interrupt for a quick second? Will you be sending the slide deck to us after this webinar?
I sent it to a list of the people that are RSVP to our mission site, but I can make sure to send it to you again at the end.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
And then just a reminder for everybody to mute their phones. And just to let you know that the application is currently live, so you can apply for the grant at any time. And then the first check is issued after you complete the contract. So like Serena pointed out, you can receive that check anywhere from up to right when we give you the notification, and then we like to hopefully have all the contracts signed within 30 days. So please keep that in mind, and that we do perform site visits if you are selected as a grantee, and then if you are a new grantee, meaning that you got an award for a new program, or this is your first time getting one of our grants, you have to have your site visit within the first 6 months of the program.
So one of the things I just want to point out is that we do have our community profile. It is available to everyone via our website at komen-chicago.org. We have both the community profile and the community executive profile so that you
Can you guys hear us?
No. Are you talking to them?
Just checking. All of a sudden, the audio cut out.
Yeah, I can't hear them either.
Yeah, I can't hear
Okay.
the presenter.
Sorry about that. So what I shared with you guys was that Susan G. Komen produces a community profile and a community executive profile. They're both on our website. They give an assessment of what the breast cancer and breast health services are available in our service areas, and we use that to make sure that our efforts are effective and targeted. And so those are located on komen-chicago.org under the Our Community Need tab.
Mm-hmm. We really strongly encourage you to reference and read the community profile, because that is the basis of what our action plan is now. And it, like she just pointed out, it unfolds all of the barriers that exist in our affiliate area, and this is what we're trying to mitigate and trying to address with our grants program.
This is just an image of the 5 counties that we serve: Cook County, DuPage County, Kane County, Lake County, and McHenry County. But our primary focus, our targeted communities, are going to be Cook County due to the high mortality disparity rate among Black women, and McHenry County due to the high rate of late-stage diagnosis.
5 counties. And so that what this means is that if you have a program in one of these 2 counties, that you will receive a couple of extra points on the reviewer's rating sheets. So again, as long as you're within our 5 counties, you're eligible for our funding, but these 2 counties will have the most priority.
So similarly, we based our funding priorities on the finding in our community profile. So this year we'll be focusing on 2 main areas. We'll be focusing on increasing access to culturally relevant patient navigation and projects that provide evidence-based navigation for uninsured and underinsured populations, as well as reducing barriers to care. So just really quickly, evidence-based practices are going to be a part of our priority as well. So they've been shown through research to consistently improve measurable outcomes, and that's how we'll be assessing the impact of all of the grants, is through measurable outcomes. And so we wanted to just give you a quick overview of why evidence-based practices are preferred. And here are some examples of where you can locate examples of evidence-based practices. We have our community guide. We have the National Cancer Institute's Research Tested Intervention Programs, the RTIPs, and then the Cochrane Reviews. So I did want to point out a few of our eligibility requirements. Specific individuals are not eligible to apply. Nonprofit organizations with a 501c3 status or governmental organization with a 170c1 status serving residents of Cook, DuPage, McHenry, Kane, and Lake counties are eligible to apply.
And this is just a short list, just a reminder that the full list of eligibility requirements are in the RFA. Some of the allowable expenses for your grant is for personnel, for staff and their salary. So anybody that's going to be working directly on your grant funded program, you can include their salary. Consultants and contractors, the same thing. Any supplies that are needed for your program, as well as travel costs, any patient care, so direct services for them. And that can include everything up to travel for the patient as well to help mitigate any of their barriers. Any other direct project expenses, so that's sort of like what I was just explaining. If there's anything that's going to help get the patient from outreach all the way through to their treatment, anything you can, all of those things can be included. Again, I want to reference that you check our RFA out, which will tell you again the full list of allowable expenses on there. These are just some examples, and then you can include direct costs, but only up to 10%. And the things that you're not allowed to include in your budget are things for research. All research is done through our headquarters office. So if you're interested in any research grants, please go to komen.org and click on research. Again, if you do anything regarding breast self-exams or using those breast models, those breast mode models, you will be ineligible for our funding. Komen does not believe in endorsing breast self-exams. And definitely do not use those models when they're out at health fairs or doing presentations. And also, we do not fund programs to develop educational materials. You cannot write a program just to, again, create promotional items or materials for your breast health program. We do ask and require that you use Komen education materials when you become a grantee if your program is funded. And then we do not fund mass media or any type of billboards or promotions like that. And the other thing that we don't do is we don't fund just health fairs. Again, we don't fund anything that's going to be just education or just outreach. Everything you do has to be leading the patient to a direct service. So again, some important dates are that your project cannot occur before April 1st. So the grant period is April 1st, 2020 to March 31st of 2021. No expenses can be accrued against this grant until your contract agreement is fully executed. And as we said before, that can take up to 6 weeks. It usually doesn't take that long. It really is a matter of you internally signing the document electronically, and then if there's any back and forth that needs to go in between your organization and ours, is why it might take up to 6 weeks. Grant payments will be made in 2 installments. The first payment is done again at the execution of your grant, and the second payment is received after your progress report is read, reviewed, and passed. So that is done again around October 31st of 2020. And grantees may request no cost extension per grant period. So what that means is that we will allow you to request an extension for your grant. And again, this is done on a one-on-one, a case-by-case basis, and it cannot be longer than 6 months. And Tarina will talk about this a little bit later, but just keep in mind that if you are going to request a no-cost extension, you have to do that by March 1st of 2021. Okay, insurance requirements. So what we do is if you become a Komen grantee, we do require that you list us as an additional insurer. You do have to send in a certificate of insurance. That is a mandate. And then we do require you to hold all of these different coverage types at minimum. So you have to have general liability, workers' compensation up to $1 million, excess umbrella insurance. If you're providing transportation or providing your directly driving your patients, you have to have automobile liability insurance, and then also medical malpractice coverage as well. So again, as far as the education materials go, we only fund projects that use educational messaging that is consistent with Komen messaging. And then, just like I said, you can click on this link here, and this will tell you why we went against using breast self-exams and why we endorse knowing your body and knowing what's best for you. And we will not fund, again, projects that endorse those breast self-exams or use breast models. And then to submit your grant application, everything is done through the new Komen Grants portal. So this is a brand new system that we're using. So no more gems. All of your grant reports, the grant applications, everything will be done through the Komen Grants portal. And the deadline for the application is Friday, December 6th by 5:00 p.m.
So this is just an image of what the login screen looks like when you go to Komen Smart Simple page. So what all of you guys will pretty much start with is register here, because all of you will be new to the system this year. So there is an option through this new system to apply to multiple affiliates. So when you go through the Komen Grants portals, you'll be able to manage any community grants for all of Komen, not just Chicago, but any other affiliates. For those of you that'll be applying to research grants from headquarters, that's an example of what you'd be able to see in the Smart Simple software. So you just need to register with an affiliate, create an account, and then you contact any additional affiliates that you want to apply to, provide the email address you're using, and then ask them to invite you to apply to the additional grants.
So if anybody has any concerns or questions about that, feel free to email Tarina or myself. Like we said, that is a great addition to this new system. And we do have that option where there's a few organizations who cross the county lines that go into the other affiliate, Memorial affiliate, as well as our affiliate up in Milwaukee. So if you are applying for multiple different affiliates, we have streamlined that process. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Serena or myself.
And we'll talk just in general about what will be needed for the application, and then the second half we'll go into more specific details about what it looks like in practice on our new Smart Simple website. So just in general, the project narrative, you'll want to include there your statement of need. So describe the need for the project and explain your target population, including all the demographics, and we'll show you guys how to do that pretty easily on Smart Simple. And then you'll explain how the objectives will grant the funding priorities listed in the RFA. For your project design, you'll describe exactly what will be accomplished with our funding and whether your strategy is to reduce the breast cancer mortality and increase the percentage of people who enter the continuum of care.
And this is a section where, again, we're going to be really huge on evidence-based practice listed. So this might be where you might want to quote or reference the design that you're using in your program and why it's going to be successful.
Yes, you also want to use this area to explain exactly how the budget will be used and include your budget justification to support your objectives, and explain how the project staff are best suited to accomplish those objectives. So you'll include things like their resume, their profile, things like that. And then you'll have the partners in sustaining the project, and that's when you explain how you'll utilize collaboration, which we mentioned earlier was one of our goals for this workshop. You'll talk about how you'll use collaboration to strengthen your project, and maybe even describe some of your past accomplishments with breast cancer projects that address our funding requirements. And then in the impact and evaluation section, you'll describe how the project objectives reduce breast cancer. You'll describe how specific project outcomes will be evaluated, and you'll describe the resources and expertise that will be used for monitoring and evaluation. And some of this will be what we'll check in with you guys about at the reporting stages. So when we come to our site visits and we do that 6, 9, and final report.
So this impact and evaluation is going to be a huge section of, which you'll see later, where the weight goes for the reviewers and the criteria. And so it's going to be really important. This is something that is new as well, is that you have to describe how your objectives are going to help us meet our big bold goal. So again, your impact and evaluation is really based on how your project is going to reduce mortality by addressing the disparities or increasing access to quality and timely care through navigation. So again, this goes back to our 2 priority areas and how you're going to evaluate that impact.
So for the project objectives, you'll see a screen similar to this for those of you who have yet to kind of explore and play around with Smart Simple. You'll see a screen like this where you'll be able to list each of the SMART objectives for your project, and also include the service type, which is a drop-down menu that'll list diagnostic services, things like treatment services, screening, and you'll be able to categorize your project objectives in that way. Oh, sorry.
No,
And then once you've completed adding all of your objectives, you'll see a screen similar to this one where all of your objectives, the number of people served, and the service type will be listed, as well as a completion date to keep you guys on target with the grant period. That'll all be listed in the main page of your application.
So just want to pause right here, because what this is a screenshot of the actual Komen grant portal, just showing you an example of what it would look like when you enter in your project objectives. So as you can see at the bottom where it says SMART objective, right below that cursor. This one, for this example, the objective is to provide 50 biopsies to uninsured women. So it's very specific. It shows again that it's reaching the uninsured, underinsured population, the specific race and ethnicity, and then the age group. And then as you can see, it has the end of the grant period on there and the number of women served. And then as Serena pointed out, one of the nice things about this now is that in that drop-down button, it's going to already pre-populate what the direct services are that can be provided in our grant to make this much simpler and easier for you.
So just really quickly, I'm sure this isn't new information, but I just wanted to go over to provide some examples of SMART objectives. And SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable / achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So you want to focus on making sure every objective that you include for the project hits those targets, and we'll talk about why later, because there will be some reporting needs that focus on those types of objectives. But I did want to provide some examples of what a SMART objective looks like. So when it comes to the reporting metrics for this new software, please again take some time to review the reporting metrics specifically listed in our RFA. But one of the things I want to point out is that all grantees will report on the demographics of those served. And the nice thing about Smart Simple is that it gives you a way to list the demographics of the people served for your project. There will be 7 possible customized report pages that are developed, and that'll be based on the drop-down menu in your objectives, where you list diagnostic services, screening services, education and training, treatment services, treatment support service, barrier reduction assistance services, or care coordination / patient navigation services. And so if you are awarded a grant, you'll only see report pages that correspond to the services that you mentioned that you would utilize when you listed your objectives. So that'll be the nice thing about how this new site is organized as well. So here's an example, another screen grab from the actual Smart Simple website that shows you what the demographics and the reporting metrics look like. So now we're going to talk a little bit about budget. And some of the things that you want to consider when creating your budget are personnel salaries, the patient care budgets, consultants or subcontractors that you might use in order to execute some of your objectives, any supplies, travel, not just for staff, but travel for potential patients, indirect costs, and then you want to have your budget summary under this category as well. And just a reminder that the maximum allowable request is going to be $50,000. And I'll show you in the next slide how it's going to look on the site. So on the site, it's pretty much a built-in Excel spreadsheet where you go in and you can add, for screening, for example, you can add the number of services you might need, the cost of service, and the total cost. And you can do that for diagnostics as well. So based on the objectives of your program, you may have a certain amount of biopsies that you want to provide for your target demographic. You calculate the number of services to be provided and then the cost per service, and it'll give you in the right-hand corner a total cost. You can do this for each of your patient care categorized budgets. And then you have other categories as well. So you'll have a category for personnel, you'll get a category for any subcontractors that you might need, and a category for transportation. And the biopsies, for example, isn't a type-in, it's something that you drop down. So it pretty much has a lot of the things that you'll need built into the portal, and you'll just enter the numbers and it'll give you a final calculation. And then once you submit all of the specific budget pieces, it'll give you a total calculation. So of course, if it's over $50,000, keep in mind that it will go beyond the funding that we're offering.
And just to point out, just to keep in mind that under your patient care budget, you should not have any subcontracts or consultants listed in that, meaning that even if you're navigating a patient to another facility, that should still be included in the patient care budget for whatever that price is that you arrange for whatever the direct services, whether it's a screening or diagnostic. So the point is, again, that the subcontractor and the consultant tab should only be used for personnel. For those type of contracts, or if you're contracting out a certain program or a facilitator. But again, the direct patient and patient costs and the patient care budget should cover what those costs are for the patient, those direct services.
So these are just some additional supporting documents that you'll need to submit along with your application, and this list is included in the RFA. You'll need to submit your tax exempt status, your information about your organization, letters of support, any project information, including partners. You'll want to include resumes and job descriptions for the key personnel that'll be involved in the project. Remember, we're trying to prove that they can meet the objectives that we set. You'll also have your budget that includes the key personnel, your authorized signature form, and your approval form, and those can be downloaded through Smart Simple and then re-uploaded, so the person who signs the approval form, if it's a project director, for example, won't actually have to log into the site. You'll be able to print a PDF version of the full application for them, allow them to sign the approval form, and then you can upload it directly back into Smart Simple.
So I know that probably doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Once we get to the Komen Grants portal training section, it'll make a lot more sense for you there. Just a quick snap of what she's explaining is, in the previous GEM system, in order to submit your grant application or your progress or final reports, it was a two-step process where the project director had to submit it and submit it to the authorized signer, and then the authorized signer had to log into the system and then sign off on the application or the progress report. Now it's been simplified where there's just a form that actually gets signed, physically signed by the authorized signer and then uploaded into the system to help, again, simplify and mitigate the process.
And here's an example of what it'll look like under the approval form tab when it's time for you to download that signature form and then re-upload it once it's signed. And this is just exactly what Amina just explained, that the project director can submit it after uploading the signed submission authorization form. So here's an example when we are in the review process, how the review criteria is broken down. So it'll be 20% focused on the statement of need, 25% focused on the project design, 20% focused on sustaining the project and the partners involved, and then 35% focused on impact and evaluation.
So again, that's a huge section right there, that impact and evaluation. We're really, again, trying to measure how you're helping us reach our big, bold goal and reduce the disparity rate and the mortality rate. So that impact and evaluation, again, is going to be really important to provide those evidence-based programs and have a plan in place on how you're going to evaluate your grant project.
And then this is just a snapshot of our review scoring anchors. So 7 is the most exceptional score that you can be awarded, whereas a 1 is the least exceptional score that you can be awarded. And keep in mind, because we have those funding priority areas, that applications that are aiming to serve specifically Cook County and McHenry County on those 2 priorities that we listed will get additional scoring points for serving those areas. And in terms of the review process, as I mentioned when we had that little circular figure, right after all the applications are submitted, our affiliate will go through a specific compliance review to just make sure that you met all the requirements of the RFA. And then the applications that did meet the compliance, that passed the compliance review, will be submitted to our review panel. So just to give you a sense of how the applications are reviewed, a minimum of 3 review panel members do score each application, and that does help reduce some bias. And then they meet to discuss the applications to determine the order or the slate of projects to present to the board of directors. Then our board of directors votes to approve the grant slate.
And so again, just to take out the bias in this process, this is to me one of the gifts about Komen's grant funding process, is that no board and no staff have any input in the applications and reviewing or scoring them. We are present at both of the review panel meetings, but again, we're there for compliance reasons. So with that being said, sometimes that we do ask that all of the reviewers fill out a conflict of interest, so that if there is a specific conflict with your organization, they will have to recuse themselves from the room. It is a heavily monitored and documented process. So we do have people in the room. We make them sign out if they do have a conflict, and sign back in when they come back into the room. Again, Serena and I are there to monitor the entire process to make sure that it was only facts being given and that they stick to what is done in the RFA. It is a very robust and rigorous process, but it is very rewarding, and it's really nice to know that the programs that are selected are done by people from the community, experts from the community, volunteers, survivors, researchers. It runs the gamut. It is an application process to be a reviewer. It is open to anyone that is in our 5 counties. Reviewers are only allowed to review for 3 years in a row, and then they must sit off, again, to help reduce some of that bias.
And so really quickly, I'm going to give you guys some additional tips on writing a grant so that we have the most impactful applications being submitted this cycle. So we'll talk about developing a proposal, writing an abstract, developing objectives, evaluation, budgeting, and some helpful hints. So when it comes to planning the proposal, the most important part is to read everything. Read the RFA, review the community profile, and again, you'll get the copy of this application. If you haven't gotten it already, you'll get it after the webinar concludes. But this is a direct link to where you can find our community profile on our website. Be sure to consider those funding priorities that we included carefully, because if your project is moving in the opposite direction of our funding priorities, then it may impact how you're scored. Be sure to discuss ideas with different decision makers in your organization other than just the grants writing team. Explore opportunities for collaboration. We are very big about coalition building, collaborating with other like-missioned organizations, and so we want to make sure that part of your plan and your proposal is to collaborate and utilize. We want to see how you're utilizing the existing resources around you. And we also want to see that you guys are working across departments to develop the proposal, because it is not a one-man job, it's not a one-team job, it's a multi-team job. We also strongly advise to start early. If you haven't already taken the time to go through the Smart Simple software, this is a great day while it's fresh on everybody's mind to go ahead and do that. And that gives you guys time to, you can go to the Komen Grants portal, sorry. And that'll allow you guys time to craft innovative applications that are really responsive to what our goals are and the identified needs in the community. So don't forget that first impressions are important. So a brief statement of your case for how your project will decrease breast cancer mortality in your community is going to be very important for us, because that's the first evidence of how you guys are planning to address our issue. Be sure to be compelling and concise. Don't exceed 750 characters, so about 200 words in the sections that we're asking for the narrative. When it comes to the process evaluation piece, we want you to focus on not just what happened, but how it happened, how much of it happened, where it happened, and who it happened to. So including that information in your process evaluation is going to be very important for us. And when it comes to the impact evaluation, we want to focus on changes in behavior, knowledge, attitudes, and belief among individuals, providers, organizations, and communities. So for your budget, be sure to focus on projects that will become reality because the central idea is sold, not because the proposal is cheap. So be realistic and ask for the money that you need, but be sure to also justify those expenses well in your budget justification section. You want to make sure that the costs follow along with the narrative of the project description, and you want to make sure that any estimated expenses and explanations can show how the funds will be used and why they're necessary to achieve the objectives that you included in your SMART objectives. So again, please read the RFA carefully and thoroughly so that you don't have to have any issues with that compliance review because you followed all the directions. Be innovative, realistic, specific, write clearly and use active words and verbiage rather than passive voice. Try to avoid jargon and spell out all acronyms. Again, some of the people on the peer review team are not experts in the field. They're intentionally community members and survivors, so they may not know all of the acronyms and the medical jargon that we're using. And allow yourself plenty of time. You have at least a month from now before the application deadline. And if you need any additional support around your application, don't hesitate to contact me. My information is listed in the presentation, but you can reach me at tnewkirk@comenchicago.org or at 773-951-7819.
And I just wanted to point out before we go into the next section next section she's going to get into is going to be about the new Komen Grants portal and how to access that. But I wanted to thank you all for your patience, and it's so exciting that some of you all are still thinking about your projects, which is totally fine. Again, that was one of the reasons why we did the introductions in the beginning, so you can hear about some of the other programs that are interested in funding and maybe how there might be some synergy. If you do have questions or want to run your project idea past us, feel free to call us and set up a time to talk. Allow us at least 48 hours to get back to you during this busy season. And again, back to the helpful hint about making sure that you don't take for granted that the reviewers might have medical knowledge and medical background. So again, if you write to a layman in layman's terms, so for a non-medical audience. So if you're going to do a program that's providing lymphedema sleeves, don't take for granted that the reviewer might know what lymphedema is. So please keep that in mind. Again, we like to have a robust and diverse set of reviewers review each year. They may be new, they might be a survivor, they might be a researcher, they might be somebody who's passionate about philanthropy. So my point is, again, is that Even if this is a new program or a refunded program, I encourage you to have another set of eyes look at them and to, again, write to the RFA.
This might be also a good time for you guys to ask any additional questions that you have specifically about the RFA and the application. I'm going to talk more in depth about our grants portal, Smart Simple. But if you have any questions for Amina or myself about the application process, please, this is a great time while we're taking a short 2 to 3 minute break to ask those questions. Okay.
Okay. So now Serena's going to go through the new grant system, which is called the Komen Grant Portal.
So again, this is going to be the first screen that you see when you log into komen.smartsimple.com. You'll want to start off by registering, and the registration will pull up a separate screen that'll ask you a few questions about your organization and your program. So just so you know, there are a few different user roles built into the Komen Grant Portal. Organization contact, so this is the role that you'll take on as an applicant or potential grantee in the grants portal, but in order to submit the actual application at the end, you'll need to have that signed submission authorization form that we discussed, and the authorized signer, again, does not need to register for the grants portal in order to sign the authorization form. We showed you a few slides ago, and we'll likely show you again that there is a download button for you guys to download that form, and then you can re-upload it directly into the Komen Grants portal.
So yay, there's only one role in the new system.
Yes. So as I mentioned, as a new registrant, there will be an eligibility quiz. That's the first thing you'll take when you sign on. And part of that is so that we can make sure that you meet the requirements of applying to the grant for Susan G. Komen in the first place. So we'll ask you to categorize yourself as a government agency, a tribal, or a nonprofit organization. Then we'll ask you whether the project actually addresses breast health and or breast cancer. And then we'll ask if you'll propose funding for any non-allowable costs, and that portal does include a long list of all the non-allowable costs. So shortly after that, you'll fill out the EIN for your organization. You can get that from your business manager, or if you don't already have it, and then you'll list the name, the address, the city, and the state for your organization.
And you don't have to enter everything, correct?
You do. You have to enter everything that has a red asterisk. So for this page, you have to enter anything with the red asterisk, and if your organization has a tax record, it'll automatically populate your organization's information. So if you put the EIN number, that's probably the fastest way to pull your particular organization up, or you can list the name and the state and the city, and it'll likely pull your organization up. Once your registration is complete, you'll get an email. The person who signed
this message, you now have access to the system. So again, moving forward, you do not have to contact staff or you're resetting your password or any of that. You now do that all on your own.
Can you guys still see the screen, or did it go out?
It did go out.
Okay, we're gonna make sure it comes back. Sorry about that. Is it back?
Yes, it is.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
So another thing that is a little bit different this year is that you will be able to, again, apply to those multiple affiliates, but like I mentioned earlier, you're going to have to contact the additional affiliates and ask them to invite you to apply to their grants through the portal, but it's the same portal, so you wouldn't have to have separate logins. And this is a snapshot of kind of what the applicant invitation process will look like. After you submit registration, this is when you'll be able to accept or decline the invitation. For the grant cycle, you'll get this from Chicago, but if you want to apply to other affiliates, you can email them and they can send you the link for the invitation for their particular grant as well. So once you accept the grant invitation, which again is something that is automatically generated through our grants portal, no one on our end has to approve this, you'll accept it, and then you'll click on the funding opportunities to view any available opportunities. So for those of you that are just applying to Komen Chicago, that one funding opportunity is us. You'll just click that and it'll open up an application. As you can see, you'll be able to see a link specifically to the community grant program for Susan G. Komen Chicago, and it shows you when it was opened and when the application closes, and then you'll hit the Apply Now button. So be sure, my suggestion to everyone is to be sure after every page to save the draft. It doesn't take you to a separate window, but it's a great way to just remind yourself not to lose information accidentally as you're going through the different stages of the grant application. You can save a draft, and every time you log in, it'll continue where your draft left off. So under the project information tab, you do want to complete all the required fields by clicking the project, by listing all your project partners, and you can do that by selecting the Edit Project Partners tab. You can upload your supporting documentation that includes those resumes and academic or work profiles for any staff that'll be participating as experts on the project. And then again, you want to save the draft so that all those documents stay populated into the software. Here's an example of a screenshot of what it'll look like when you add that information. You edit the partner, and then you attach their specific documentation in another tab by using the Upload button. You also want to use this screen to click any of the funding priorities that will be addressed in your project. So under the Narrative tab, and these are tabs that are listed right above any information that you fill out on the Komen Grants portal. You'll click the RFA guidelines to open the RFA, and again, read it carefully and in its entirety to make sure that you are being compliant to all of the rules and the guidelines listed. Then you can refer to the project narrative section headers on the actual grant portals, and then you begin providing your responses for the statement of needs section, the project design section, the partners in sustaining the project section, and the impact and evaluation fields. Don't forget to click Save Draft when these sections are complete. Here's an example of what it looks like on the actual screen.
So again, you'll fill out all of those sections. Right now it's on the narrative section, that's why it's highlighted in pink, but as you can see, it has the project information, the demographics, the budget, all the way down to the authorized signer approval form.
Yes, and everything that has a red asterisk is required in order for those sections to be complete, just so you know. And remember, our advice was to try to keep it 750 characters / 200 words or less in these sections. We want you guys to be concise. Similarly, as we explained earlier, this is where you'll edit, in the narrative section is where you'll edit your SMART project objectives by just clicking the Edit Project Objective screen. And again, we showed you earlier how it'll be that drop-down menu that lists each objective, where it'll focus, how many people it'll serve, etc. So this is what it looks like on the actual screen when you add a project objective. You write out the SMART objective: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, and you choose what the service type is, and that'll determine at the end when you do all your data reports for when you get the grant for your progress and final reports. That's how it'll categorize in the Komen Grants portal so that your reporting is made a little bit easier for you. And again, save the draft each time you go to a different section of the application. We want to keep reminding you of that, because if you don't save the draft, when you log out and log in, it will not be there. Again, on the demographics tab, you're able to click by race and ethnicity who you'll be serving as a part of your project objective and your overall project. And then you'll also be able to click which locations are being served across our service area as well. And then you want to click Save Draft when that part's complete. The budget is where you'll include those key personnel and any salaries, but the budget section is also broken down not just by key personnel, but by project costs and any indirect costs as well. So you'll be able to include all the costs associated with your project in this tab, as you can see, for example. And when you put in those personnel and those salaries, part of the justification for that section is that we need to see the resumes of those people who you're suggesting that we pay a specific salary to for their service. A project director must be listed with a copy of their resume, whether they're receiving funding from our grant or not, just so you guys know. That's important for us to know who's directing the project.
And if they're not funded, you would just put 0%.
Yes, if they're not funded, you just put 0. For the patient care budget, again, I mentioned that there are salary budgets, patient care budgets, project budgets, everything like that. You'll want to just add in through the Edit Patient Care Budget tab, and each of those categories for screening, diagnostics, and treatment will have ways that you can add in direct costs, and then it'll total, the portal will total it for you. So here's an example of, I'm sorry, this is not an example. So what'll happen is it'll look a lot like an Excel sheet. So for a screening cost, if you want to provide a certain number of mammograms, you would list 50 mammograms at $50 each, and it will total how much that costs, and that'll be included in your screening cost. But if your project is also focusing on diagnostic care, then you'll be able to list any items associated with diagnostics, how many people will be served, and it'll calculate it for you. Then it'll total your entire budget for patient care specifically, so that when you're doing your grant reporting, you'll be able to see your patient care budget versus your personnel and salaries budget. Another thing that is asked of you is what percentage of the project activity is being covered by education, screening, or diagnosis, so that we can use that to compare how much of your budget is being used for education, screening, diagnosis, and treatment versus how much of the project activity is actually doing those things. So you'll add that to the project activity tab, and it'll look very similar to the budget tab, where you'll just list up to 100% how much education will be required for your project, how much screening will be required. And some of these sections can say 0, some of them can say 100. It doesn't matter how they're arranged. It's just more important that they add up in total to 100%. And then lastly, that approval tab form, as we mentioned earlier, the nice thing about the Komen's grant portal this year versus last year is that for the approval form, you can download that authorized signature form directly from the grants portal. Then you can have it signed, collecting signatures from the organization's authorized signature and the primary contact for the grant, and then you can re-upload it to the grant without having to have a separate login information for that authorized signature. Another good thing about this is that you can download a full PDF of the completed application. So if the authorized signature or even the project directors or someone else wanted to view the application in its totality before submitting it or before signing off, it can be downloaded as a full PDF. And then after that, you'll just click the submit button once the entire application is complete. So here's an example of what that page will look like once you get to the final section of the grant application on the Komen Grants portal. You'll download that signature form, you'll re-upload it, but you can also download a full copy of the application at the top left-hand corner where it says application summary. That'll download a complete PDF. So here's that's in a nutshell what the Smart Simple Komen Grants portal will look like this year. Some helpful hints is that you do want to use the grants portal manual and follow directions as written. You want to save often. I probably mentioned that a lot, but I want to make sure that you guys aren't missing out on the time for reviewing the final product because you are not saving properly. And again, the Smart Simple software will log out after 30 minutes of inactivity, which is why we keep encouraging you to save your drafts along the way, because if you walk away and take a lunch break, that stuff will not be in there. Only one user is required, and my recommendation would just be to have a password and a login information that's shared amongst people who will be contributing to the grant rather than making separate logins for the same account. And then again, the authorized signer role in this system is no longer needed. That can be downloaded and re-uploaded into the grants portal directly. So if you need any additional assistance beyond the training that we just provided, you can click the help to access the applicant training, and there are options for you guys to view a video, and then that is also where the grants portal user guide will be located.
And then they're also on our website. So we will have we've recorded this session. We might have to re-record it, but it will be posted on our website as well as the Komen Grants portal user guide. So
just some last minute information. We wanted to share what happens if you are awarded a 2020-2021 grant. And the first step, of course, is to celebrate and congratulate your team. This was a group effort, so we want to make sure you guys celebrate. The next thing to think about is executing that grant contract. Again, it can take up to 6 weeks, although it does not typically take that long if there's not a lot of back and forth regarding the details of the contract. Once we receive that contract, then the first half of your payment will be sent to the organization. But keep in mind that you cannot receive funds for, if the program for the grant started, let's say in April, you can't receive funds that begin in July. You have to only utilize those funds. You can't use them retroactively. You want to then attend a grant orientation. The 2020 RFTC and networking session.
Sorry, that stands for Race for the Cure. So
Race
all
for
of
the
our
Cure.
grantees are invited to our annual Mother's Day race.
And then you want to make sure that you're along the way collecting that data necessary for your 6, 9, and 12-month report. Be sure to turn all reports in on time, and we listed some of those important dates earlier in the application, earlier in the presentation. We also want you guys to keep in mind that any changes to the grant that you need will have to be made prior and written approval from the Komen Chicago affiliate. So they have to be approved through the Komen Grants portal. So if you make changes after the award, they have to be, they're subject to approval. Be prepared to host at least one site visit during the grant cycle. And for those of you who are new applicants, we'll be attempting to complete that site visit within the first month of you guys receiving the grant. First 6 months, I'm sorry, of you guys receiving the grant. And then don't hesitate to utilize me, the Community Programs Manager, to help answer any of your questions related to the grant process along the way. So that concludes our presentation. We want to give you guys the opportunity to maybe ask any questions that you still have lingering regarding the new grants portal, Smart Simple.
Or the RFA.
Or the RFA, if you still have questions about that.
Okay, well, again, thank you all for your patience. I'm so excited that you're interested in applying for our grant. Pretty much it's the same priorities as last year. We have a new a new system that we're using, a new online system called the Komen Grants Portal. Most of the information, as you can see, is the same as in previous years. The formatting is a little different and much more simplified. The other thing to point out is that everybody's goal is the same. That's something else that's different that we've changed the last 2 years. That you used to be able to create whatever goal you wanted to for your program and then have your objectives aligned to that. Now everybody has the same goal, which is to help us get to our big, bold goal of reducing mortality and the disparity rates here in Chicagoland. And again, that the application is currently open. So do pace yourself, you allow yourself a lot of time, give us 48 hours to respond to you. And then we are having another RFA session this Thursday in person. If you'd like to attend, we would love to see you. Otherwise, you have Tarina's information. Thanks again for attending today. Thanks for your patience. And we look forward to hopefully seeing you all in the new year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
You. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.